The muffled clink of a spoon against a porcelain mug was the only sound that broke the morning silence in the dining room. Claire placed a steaming mug of coffee before her husband, Ethan, who was fumbling with the knot of his silk tie. The rich aroma of sizzling bacon and maple syrup drifted in from the kitchen, a scent that for anyone else would signal a comforting start to the day. For Claire, however, this morning felt as bland and tasteless as all the ones that had come before it. 2 sugars. Just how you like it, Claire said softly, making sure his coffee was perfect. Ethan turned, his tired face breaking into a warm smile. He reached out and stroked the back of her hand. Perfect, honey. Thank you. And whatever you're cooking smells incredible. I'm starving. Before Claire could return the smile, a sharp clearing of a throat echoed from the grand staircase. Beatrice, her mother-in-law, descended, wrapped in a luxurious cashmere dressing gown. Her face, already meticulously made up for the day, was a mask of rigid disapproval. Her eyes scanned the breakfast table with undisguised contempt. Coffee and bacon? Again? Beatrice grumbled, pulling out a chair with a deliberate, grating screech that set Claire's teeth on edge. Ethan's stomach is delicate. He can't start his day with greasy, fried food. You've been married to my son for 2 years. Must you still be so ignorant of how people of our class live? People in this house start their day with avocado toast on 7-grain bread, a side of organic berries, and an almond milk latte. Not this. Diner food. Claire took a quiet, steadying breath, pressing down on the familiar ache in her chest. She was used to this. These daily barbs were her breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm sorry, Beatrice. Ethan asked for bacon and eggs. He said he missed dinner last night working late. Claire replied, her voice a model of calm. Ethan, his mouth already full of the first bite, quickly intervened. It's delicious, Mom. Really, I was craving it. Do you want me to make you a plate? Beatrice scoffed, crossing her arms over her chest. Don't be ridiculous. I can get my own food. Besides, your wife's expertise seems to be limited to the kitchen. Bring her to a conversation about finance or art with my friends and she just stares blankly. That's why I told you from the beginning. Ethan, marry someone on your level. Someone with the right background, the right pedigree, not just a pretty, simple face. The words were like poisoned darts, striking deep and true. Claire could only lower her gaze, her hands balling into fists inside the pockets of her apron. Ethan stopped chewing, a heavy sigh escaping his lips. Mom, please. It's 7 in the morning. Can we not start this again? He said, his tone weary. Claire is my wife. Please, show her some respect. I'm merely speaking the truth, dear. Beatrice shot back, her voice rising, her eyes, hard as marbles, fixed on Claire. You are a rising executive. The future of the company rests on your shoulders. You need a partner who elevates your status, not one who embarrasses me at the country club. Claire drew a long, slow breath. She knew that arguing would only make Ethan's morning more stressful before he left for a difficult day at work. It's all right, Ethan. Please, finish your breakfast before it gets cold. I'm just going to go clean up in the kitchen. Claire turned and walked towards the kitchen, leaving the oppressive heat of the dining room behind her. From behind the wall, she could still hear the faint drone of Beatrice's voice, lecturing Ethan on the proper conduct of a corporate wife. Claire turned the faucet on full blast, the rush of water a welcome noise to drown out the pain in her heart. She had no idea that this morning's humiliation was merely the prelude to a malicious scheme her mother-in-law had already set in motion. By early afternoon, the atmosphere in the house had shifted dramatically. Ethan, who usually didn't return until late in the evening, called home, his voice crackling with a rare and urgent excitement. Beatrice took the call, and within minutes, the entire household was thrown into a state of high alert. Maria, Claire, get to the living room, now! Beatrice's shriek echoed up from the ground floor. Claire, who was folding laundry upstairs, hurried down. She found her mother-in-law pacing back and forth, her face flushed with a triumphant glow, her left hand clutching her smartphone like a lifeline. Maria, their middle-aged housekeeper, stood in a corner, looking bewildered. What is it, Beatrice? You sound panicked, Claire asked cautiously. Beatrice stopped and gave Claire a condescending, head-to-toe glance. Not panicked, busy. Do you have any idea who is coming here this afternoon? Isabel Davenport. The Isabel Davenport, the biggest real estate magnate in the state. She's the lead potential investor for Ethan's new development project. If she agrees to fund it, Ethan's company will be catapulted into a new league. Beatrice's eyes shone with a fiery ambition. This is a golden opportunity. Mrs. Davenport is a perfectionist. She notices every detail, and she absolutely detests anything that seems common or unsophisticated. So, this afternoon, this house needs to be flawless. Maria, I want you to repolish the silver and use the expensive French lavender airspray in the sitting room, not that cheap grocery store stuff. Yes, ma'am, Maria replied, nodding quickly before scurrying off towards the cleaning supply closet. Beatrice then turned her attention to Claire. Her expression grew cold and severe. And you, she said, her voice dropping to a low, warning tone. Listen to me carefully. This afternoon, you are not to join us in the living room. You will prepare Mrs. Davenport's favorite tea chamomile with a slice of lemon and arrange the pastries I've had delivered from La Rêve Bakery. And you will serve it using the Baccarat crystal glasses from the display cabinet. After you've served them, you go straight to your room. Do not linger. Do not try to make small talk. Claire frowned. But Beatrice, surely Ethan will want me there to help welcome such an important guest. Don't argue with me, Beatrice snapped. What would you possibly discuss with Isabel Davenport? The fluctuating price of organic kale? This is business. High-level business. Your presence would only be a distraction, a blemish. It would make Ethan look weak, having a wife who is so obviously out of her depth. Do you understand? Claire's heart sank, but she kept her face a placid mask. She was too exhausted to fight. Fine, Beatrice. I'll prepare everything in the kitchen. Good. Know your place, Beatrice hissed. Oh, and one more thing. Change out of that outfit. Put on something decent. Even if you're just serving drinks, I won't be mistaken for an employer who can't properly dress her staff. After delivering her final, cutting remark, Beatrice turned and swept up the stairs to her bedroom, already planning the perfect designer dress to wear for her esteemed guest. Claire stood frozen in the middle of the room, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles turned white. Patience, Claire. Patience, she told herself. She took a deep breath and headed for the kitchen to retrieve the crystal service her mother-in-law had demanded. She didn't realize that, upstairs, Beatrice was smiling into her vanity mirror, plotting something far more cruel than mere verbal insults. At 3 o'clock, Beatrice emerged from her room carrying a medium-sized leather handbag. She walked to the dining table where Claire was arranging miniature pastries on a tiered silver platter. Without a word, Beatrice placed the bag on the table and unzipped it. From inside, she produced a thick manila envelope, bulging with its contents, so full, in fact, that the edge of the flap was slightly torn from the pressure. Beatrice deliberately turned the envelope over, allowing a thick stack of $100 bills to peek out. Claire, busy with the pastries, glanced over. "Look at this," Beatrice said in a stage whisper, ensuring she had Claire's full attention. $50,000, in cash. It's the collection from my charity committee for the new pediatric wing at the Children's Hospital. Claire gave a polite nod. "That's wonderful, Beatrice. I'm sure the hospital will be very grateful." "Of course, they will be," Beatrice said, patting the envelope proudly. "People trust me with this kind of money because they know my reputation. They know I'm an honest woman, not like some people from a lower station in life who see a little bit of money and lose their minds." The jibe was unmistakable. Claire remained silent, pretending to focus on arranging a tiny fruit tart. "A sum this large can't just be left lying around," Beatrice continued, her voice loud and clear. "I'm going to lock this in the safe in my room right now. And don't you even think about setting foot in my bedroom. Understood? If a single dollar of this money goes missing, I'll know exactly who the primary suspect is." "I would never enter your room without being invited," Claire said softly, striving to keep her tone respectful even as her blood boiled. Beatrice smirked. "Good. You know your place. The temptations for poor people are overwhelming when they see this much cash just sitting there. I'm just giving you a fair warning." Having sufficiently demeaned her daughter-in-law, Beatrice picked up the thick envelope, slid it back into her handbag, and strode majestically back towards the stairs. The sound of her bedroom door slamming shut echoed through the house, a final assertion of her dominance. Claire let out a long, shaky breath. She stared at the pastries, her vision blurring. She hurried to finish her work, wanting nothing more than to retreat to her room for a moment of peace before Mrs. Davenport and Ethan arrived. But she didn't know that once Beatrice's door was closed, the older woman didn't go anywhere near her safe. Instead, Beatrice crept silently to the door, connecting her bedroom to the rear balcony, a shared space that offered direct, unseen access to Ethan and Claire's room. In her hand, she clutched the manila envelope containing $50,000. A venomous, triumphant smile played on her lips. "Your time is up, Claire," Beatrice thought viciously. "Today, I'll make sure Ethan throws you out of this house with the brand of a common thief." At 4 o'clock, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across Claire's bedroom floor. All the preparations were complete. Maria was sweeping the front porch. Beatrice was still in her room, perfecting her appearance. Claire finally had a moment to herself. She entered her room, intending to change into a more suitable outfit as her mother-in-law had commanded. As she opened the closet, her eyes fell upon the stack of Ethan's freshly ironed dress shirts on the lower shelf. Something was wrong. The stack was crooked, disheveled. She distinctly remembered folding and stacking them with perfect precision that very morning. "Did Ethan come home to grab a shirt?" she murmured to herself. But that made no sense. He wasn't due home for at least another hour. Driven by a strange premonition, Claire knelt and lifted the stack of shirts. Her breath caught in her throat. Her eyes widened, and her heart began to pound against her ribs as if it were trying to escape her chest. There, nestled at the bottom of the closet, was a thick, brown manila envelope, an envelope from which the corner of a banded stack of $100 bills was clearly visible. It was her mother-in-law's charity money. Claire scrambled backward, her hands flying to her mouth. Her mind raced, piecing everything together with terrifying speed. How did this get here? Who put it here? Her thoughts immediately flashed back to the scene at the dining table an hour ago, Beatrice showing off the money, threatening her, calling her a poor person susceptible to temptation. Like a puzzle snapping into place, Claire understood the horrifying scenario unfolding around her. "It's a trap," a voice screamed inside her head. "She planted the money in my closet." She analyzed the situation with sudden, chilling clarity. The money was placed under Ethan's clothes, not hers. Why? To make it look more convincing, of course. When Beatrice searched the room later, it would look as if Claire, in a panic, had hastily shoved it under her husband's things to avoid suspicion. Or worse, Beatrice wanted Ethan himself to find it, to make him feel the ultimate betrayal from his own wife. A tremor ran through Claire's body. This wasn't just another insult. This was a calculated character assassination. If that money was found here, in her room, no one would believe her. Ethan, no matter how much he loved her, would be shaken by the physical evidence of $50,000 in cash hidden in his own closet, especially with a crucial witness like Mrs. Davenport in the house. Her status as the daughter-in-law from a modest background would be an immediate guilty verdict. She would be disgraced, divorced, and could even face prison. A cold dread crept up her spine. Her first instinct was to run to Beatrice's room, throw the money in her face, and scream. But she stopped herself. "Don't be a fool, Claire," the rational part of her brain warned. "If you confront her now, she'll just shriek, accuse you of being caught, and claim you were trying to return the money out of fear. She'll twist it." What could she do? Throw it in the trash? Sneak it out of the house? There was no time. Mrs. Davenport and Ethan could arrive any minute. If she were seen carrying a suspicious envelope out of her room, it would be just as damning. Claire stared at the manila envelope. In the midst of her rising panic, a strange, cold calm washed over her. The shaking in her hands stopped. The fear evaporated, replaced by an icy, profound anger. For 2 years, she had been silent. For 2 years, she had endured every humiliation to keep the peace. But this was an attempt to utterly destroy her. Her mother-in-law had crossed a line. If Beatrice wanted to play dirty, Claire would show her how to win the game without getting a speck of mud on her hands. She took a deep, centering breath, her panic now completely gone. Her face was as smooth and unreadable as the surface of a frozen lake, hiding a terrifying depth. She knelt, reached out, and picked up the thick manila envelope. $50,000 felt heavy in her hand, the weight of a lie designed to ruin her life. "You want to play games with me, Beatrice?" Claire whispered, her voice a chill in the quiet room. A tiny, mirthless smile, one she had never shown anyone in this house, touched the corner of her lips. "Let's see who's crying by the end of the day." Claire scanned her room. She couldn't hide the money anywhere else in here. She knew Beatrice would demand a thorough search later. The kitchen or living room were too risky. Maria might find it. Her eyes then landed on the navy blue cooking apron she had hung on the back of her door. It was made of thick canvas, with two large, deep pockets on the front. Without hesitation, Claire folded the envelope slightly to make it more compact and slid it into the right-hand pocket of the apron. It was deep enough to swallow the package whole, leaving no obvious bulge as long as she didn't stand perfectly still. She then changed into a simple but elegant silk blouse and tailored slacks. She brushed her hair, applied a touch of makeup to look fresh, and then put the navy apron back on. Perfect. She looked exactly like a young hostess, busy preparing for an important guest. No one would ever suspect that her apron pocket held $50,000 in hot cash. Ding-dong. The sound of the doorbell chimed through the house. From her window, Claire could hear the purr of a luxury sedan pulling into the driveway. Downstairs, Beatrice's hurried footsteps were followed by her high-pitched call to the housekeeper. "Maria! Maria! Get the door! They're here! Oh heavens! Is my makeup straight?" Claire looked at her reflection one last time. She patted the right pocket of her apron. "It's all going to be okay," she murmured. This was her first move. Her mother-in-law had set the board, placing her piece in a deadly check. But Beatrice had forgotten one crucial rule of chess. The most dangerous piece isn't the king or the queen, it's the pawn that everyone underestimates, the one that quietly advances all the way to the other side of the board. With a calm, steady gait and her head held high, Claire opened her bedroom door and walked downstairs. She was ready to greet her guest of honor. She was ready to engage in the war her mother-in-law had just declared. The large, carved oak front door swung open. Maria bowed her head respectfully, holding her breath. Standing on the threshold was the woman who had sent the entire house into a frenzy. Isabel Davenport. The woman's aura immediately commanded the space. She wore a tailored Chanel suit in a deep emerald green that complemented her perfectly coiffed silver hair. A string of classic pearls adorned her neck, and a diamond watch glittered on her wrist. But it was her eyes, sharp, intelligent, and intimidating, that truly defined her. They were the eyes of a top-tier executive accustomed to giving orders and getting results. "Isabel, my dear, what a tremendous honor to have you in our humble home," Beatrice exclaimed, practically jogging down the stairs with her arms outstretched as if greeting a lifelong friend, though they had only met twice at charity functions. Her entire demeanor had shifted 180 degrees. The snarling, contemptuous woman from that morning was gone, replaced by a caricature of saccharine sweetness. Mrs. Davenport accepted Beatrice's offered hand with a polite but distant smile. "Beatrice, good afternoon. I hope you'll forgive me for being a few minutes early." The traffic was surprisingly light. Her voice was low, calm, and authoritative, a stark contrast to Beatrice's shrill enthusiasm. "Oh, not at all. Not at all. We're delighted. Please, come in, have a seat," Beatrice gushed, gesturing extravagantly towards the plush cream-colored sofa in the formal living room. As Mrs. Davenport walked towards the sofa, Claire, standing near a pillar in the hall, noted a crucial detail. Tucked under Mrs. Davenport's left arm was an authentic Hermes Birkin bag in classic black leather with gold hardware. The clasp of the multi-thousand-dollar bag was unlatched, its top gaping slightly open, revealing the top of a long wallet and a designer glasses case. Mrs. Davenport sat gracefully, placing the Birkin on the sofa cushion right next to her. A very strategic position. "Ethan isn't home yet?" Mrs. Davenport asked, her gaze sweeping the room, which was now overwhelmingly fragrant from Maria's efforts. "Oh, my son is on his way. He called just a little while ago, said he'd be here in 15 minutes. You know how it is, a young CEO, so much to manage at the office," Beatrice chuckled, trying to subtly boast. Her eyes then fell on Claire, still standing by the pillar. Beatrice's face tightened for a fraction of a second before the artificial smile snapped back into place. "Ah, and this is my daughter-in-law, Claire," she said quickly, her tone dismissive. "Claire, come say hello to Mrs. Davenport. Then straight to the kitchen, dear. Prepare that special chamomile tea for our guest." Claire stepped forward calmly. She inclined her head slightly, offering a genuine and polite smile. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Davenport. It's a pleasure to welcome you to our home." Mrs. Davenport's gaze assessed Claire from head to toe. It wasn't a demeaning look like her mother-in-law's, but a shrewd, evaluating one. She took in the neat blouse, the natural makeup, and, most of all, Claire's poised and serene demeanor. "Good afternoon, Claire. Thank you for the welcome." "I'll be in the kitchen preparing your refreshments, ma'am," Claire said softly. Without waiting for another sharp order from Beatrice, she turned and walked towards the kitchen. Her right hand slipped into her apron pocket, her fingers brushing against the coarse paper of the thick envelope hidden within. Her heart began to beat faster, but her steps remained even and unhurried. The game was afoot. In the kitchen, Claire worked with quiet efficiency. She took out the baccarat crystal glasses Beatrice had demanded from their velvet-lined case. Her hands were steady as she poured hot water into a glass teapot filled with dried chamomile flowers. The soft, calming aroma filled the kitchen, a complete contradiction to the storm raging inside her. From the living room, she could hear the muffled sounds of conversation, or rather, the sound of Beatrice dominating the conversation, endlessly talking up Ethan's project, and what a brilliant move it would be for Mrs. Davenport to invest. Mrs. Davenport's responses were brief, punctuated by polite but non-committal hums. It was clear the powerful woman was already growing bored of Beatrice's sycophantic chatter. Suddenly, hurried footsteps approached the kitchen. Beatrice appeared in the doorway. The sweet smile she wore for her guest had vanished, replaced by a venomous scowl. "What is taking you so long to make a simple cup of tea?" she hissed, her eyes glaring. "Remember what I said. Don't you dare embarrass me. Bring the tea, put it on the table, and then get out of sight. I need to use the powder room for a moment to touch up my lipstick. And also..." Beatrice let the sentence hang in the air. She stared hard into Claire's eyes, searching for any sign of panic, and also to check the safe in my room. "Just want to make sure that charity donation is secure. I have this strange feeling all of a sudden, as if there's a thief in this house." A cruel smile played on Beatrice's lips. She was delivering her cue, relishing her own little drama, anticipating the moment she would burst out of her room, screaming that the money was gone. But Claire gave her nothing. Her face remained a blank canvas. She calmly placed a small dish of sugar cubes onto the silver tray. "The tea is ready, Beatrice. I'll take it out now." Frustrated by her daughter-in-law's unnerving lack of reaction, Beatrice clicked her tongue in annoyance. "Fine. And don't mess it up," she threatened, before turning and heading down the hall that led past the guest bathroom and towards the back staircase, her route to stage her discovery. This was it. Beatrice had just given her a wide-open path. Her mother-in-law was off preparing her dramatic scene, leaving Claire alone to face Mrs. Davenport in the living room. This golden opportunity would not come twice. Claire lifted the silver tray, laden with the crystal teapot, 2 cups, and the tiered platter of pastries. She walked out of the kitchen and into the living room, her mind calculating with lightning speed. The distance from the coffee table to the sofa, the position of the Hermes bag, the direction of Mrs. Davenport's gaze, everything had to be perfect. "Your chamomile tea, Mrs. Davenport?" Claire said softly as she approached the table. Mrs. Davenport, who had been absently studying a painting on the wall, turned. Her face, which had looked tense with boredom, softened slightly at Claire's arrival. "Thank you, Claire. It smells lovely." "You're welcome. These are chamomile flowers we dry ourselves, not from a tea bag. The aroma is much more authentic and relaxing," Claire explained conversationally as she began to pour the tea. Mrs. Davenport raised a curious eyebrow, seeming genuinely interested. "Oh, you dry them yourself? It's rare to find a young person with the patience for such things these days. Beatrice is lucky to have such a diligent daughter-in-law." Claire just offered a small, humble smile. "It's just a small hobby to pass the time." She placed the steaming cup on a coaster directly in front of Mrs. Davenport. Claire was now standing beside the table, less than 2 feet away from the open Birkin bag on the sofa. Her eyes flicked to the bag's interior. It was spacious. The envelope would slide in without a sound. Now, she just needed a distraction. One single second where Mrs. Davenport looked away. As if on cue from the universe itself, a loud vibration sounded from the coffee table. Mrs. Davenport's phone lit up, the screen displaying the name Mr. Davies, CFO. Mrs. Davenport sighed, looking annoyed by the interruption. "My apologies, Claire. Business never sleeps." "Of course, please, take your call," Claire replied, taking a half-step back to give her privacy. Mrs. Davenport picked up the phone. As she answered, she instinctively turned her body toward the large window on her right, angling herself away from the table and, crucially, away from her bag, pressing a finger to her other ear to hear better. "Hello? Yes. What is the status of the quarterly report? I distinctly told you to have it revised before 5 o'clock. Her tone became sharp, her focus entirely on the call. Now, Claire's instincts took over. Her body moved with the fluid grace of a magician performing sleight of hand. While pretending to straighten the pastry platter on the table, her left hand rested on the table's edge for balance. Her right hand, in a single, silent motion, slipped into her apron pocket. Her fingers closed around the thick manila envelope. She leaned forward slightly, as if checking the placement of a small serving fork. In a split-second movement that was nearly invisible to the naked eye, her right hand darted towards the sofa. She positioned it directly over the mouth of the black Hermes bag and released her grip. Thump! The envelope, heavy with $50,000, slid silently into the bag, its soft landing muffled by the expensive leather lining. Its brown color was instantly lost in the dark interior of the deep purse. The new weight caused the top of the bag to sag slightly, concealing the envelope completely. Claire's right hand was immediately back on the table, adjusting a napkin near the teapot. Her breathing was even, her face calm. She swallowed once, feeling the wild hammering of her heart against her ribs, but externally, she was a statue of serene composure. Done, a flawless execution. Mrs. Davenport ended her call with a frustrated sigh and placed her phone back on the table. She turned back to Claire, completely unaware that her prized handbag now harbored a ticking time bomb planted by the very hostess serving her tea. "I apologize for that. My staff can be remarkably incompetent at times," Mrs. Davenport lamented, reaching for her teacup. "It must be exhausting, running such a large company," Claire replied with genuine-sounding sympathy, her face a mask of absolute tranquility. "Please, try the tea. I hope it helps you relax a little." "Mrs. Davenport took a sip, and her eyes lit up. "This is excellent, perfectly brewed." Claire bowed her head respectfully. "Thank you, ma'am. If you'll excuse me, I should check on dinner. Ethan should be arriving any moment." "Of course, please do," Mrs. Davenport replied, her tone now significantly warmer than when she had first arrived. Claire turned and walked slowly back towards the kitchen. The moment she was out of sight, past the dividing wall, her knees gave out. She leaned against the cool plaster, closing her eyes and taking a huge gulp of air. She had done it. The trap money had been moved. Now, all she had to do was wait for her mother-in-law to detonate the very stage she had so carefully constructed. 2 minutes passed. Claire was rinsing her hands at the kitchen sink when the silence of the house was shattered by a blood-curdling scream. "No, oh my God, the money! The charity money is gone!" The shriek came from the second floor. It was shrill, theatrical, and filled with a carefully manufactured panic designed for maximum dramatic effect. It was Beatrice. Claire turned off the water. The corner of her mouth twitched, suppressing a cold smile. "Showtime," she thought. She grabbed a towel, dried her hands, and then ran from the kitchen, her face a perfect mask of alarm. In the living room, Mrs. Davenport nearly choked on her tea. She set her cup down with a sharp clatter. The elegant woman rose from the sofa, her expression a mixture of shock and profound irritation. From the top of the stairs, Beatrice came stumbling down, her movements wildly theatrical. Her hair was artfully disheveled, and she clutched her head as if the world were ending. Crocodile tears welled in her eyes. "Beatrice, what on earth is going on? Why are you screaming?" Mrs. Davenport demanded, her tone sharp. To her, this kind of outburst was utterly undignified. Beatrice collapsed onto a lone armchair across from Mrs. Davenport, burying her face in her hands and letting out loud, gut-wrenching sobs. "My money, Isabel. The money for the children's hospital. $50,000 in cash. It's gone. Stolen from the safe in my room." Maria came rushing in from the back of the house. "Ma'am, stolen? What do you mean?" "It's gone, Maria. Gone," Beatrice wailed. She then looked up, her tear-filled eyes sweeping the room before landing, with laser-like focus, on Claire, who stood at the edge of the living room. Beatrice's finger shot out, pointing directly at her daughter-in-law. "Someone had to have gone into my room, and the only other people in this house all day, besides me and Maria, were you, Claire," she accused, her voice booming. Claire stepped forward, her face a canvas of convincing shock and confusion. "My God, Beatrice, what are you saying? I've been in the kitchen and downstairs all afternoon. I haven't been upstairs at all, let alone in your room. Maria is my witness." Maria nodded hesitantly. "That's true, ma'am. Miss Claire was helping me in the kitchen, preparing for Mrs. Davenport." "Oh, don't you dare cover for her, Maria," Beatrice snarled. She stood up and stalked towards Claire, her eyes blazing. "I showed you that money at the dining table this afternoon, didn't I? I saw the greedy look in your eyes. You must have snuck upstairs while I was in the shower, used a spare key to open my safe, and hidden it somewhere." Mrs. Davenport, a reluctant witness to this tacky domestic drama, massaged her temples. "This is all very inappropriate. Beatrice, please, calm yourself. You can't just accuse people without any proof. This is a serious allegation. A sum that large. Shouldn't you just call the police?" At the mention of the police, Beatrice's face paled for a moment. The last thing she wanted was a formal investigation. The police would check for fingerprints, signs of forced entry, and would quickly discover that the safe had never been broken into. "No, no police, Isabel. This is a private family matter," Beatrice said quickly, her voice trembling slightly before she regained her composure. She turned her furious gaze back to Claire. "We will handle this right here. I know how people from your background think. An easy score is too tempting to resist. The proof has to be in her room." "How dare you accuse me like this?" Claire retorted, her voice trembling as if she were holding back tears of outrage. She had to play the part of the wounded victim perfectly. "If you don't believe me, then search the entire house. Search my room." Beatrice's eyes lit up with triumph. The bait had been taken. Claire herself had challenged her to search the room. Her plan was unfolding flawlessly. "Fine. If that's what you want, we will search your room right now," Beatrice exclaimed, nearly forgetting her sorrowful act in her excitement. Just then, the familiar purr of a car engine sounded from the garage. The front door opened, and Ethan walked in, dressed in his business suit. He looked exhausted, but he managed a smile for his important guest. That smile vanished instantly when he saw the scene before him. His mother, red-faced and furious, Maria, cowering in a corner, Claire, with tears in her eyes, and Isabel Davenport, his key investor, sitting stiffly with an expression of cold discomfort. "What's going on? Why is everyone yelling?" Ethan asked, confused, as he walked further into the room. "Mrs. Davenport, good afternoon. I'm so sorry I'm late. There was a major accident on the freeway. But what is the problem here?" Beatrice rushed to her son, grabbing his arm. Her tears started flowing again, this time with more intensity. "Ethan, thank God you're home. You have to teach your wife a lesson. She had the audacity to steal my money." Ethan was stunned. His eyes widened as he looked from his mother to Claire, who just shook her head slowly. "Steal? What money? Mom, don't just make things up. We have a guest. The $50,000 for the charity, Ethan. It's gone from my safe." Beatrice jabbed a finger towards Claire over Ethan's shoulder. "And I know for a fact this girl from the sticks is the one who took it. She saw me with the cash this afternoon, and her eyes lit up like a Christmas tree. You need to wake up, Ethan. Your wife is nothing but a parasite." "That's enough, Mom," Ethan bellowed, his voice echoing in the large room. His patience had finally snapped. He knew his mother disliked Claire, but to accuse her of being a thief in front of a business associate was a monumental humiliation. Claire would never do something like that. She's my wife. I provide for her every need. Why would she steal charity money? Ethan defended her fiercely, moving to Claire's side and putting a protective arm around her trembling shoulders. Claire leaned into him, hiding the faint smile that touched her lips. Ethan's defense was a sweet, unexpected bonus. Beatrice scoffed, planting her hands on her hips. You've been blinded by this woman, Ethan. Some people are just greedy by nature. If you're so sure she's innocent, then prove it. Let's go search her room right now. Are you brave enough for that? The challenge was thrown down like a gauntlet, loud and clear for Mrs. Davenport to hear. Beatrice was cornering him. If Ethan refused, he was protecting a thief. If he agreed, he himself would find the damning evidence in his own closet. A brilliant plan, Beatrice thought. Ethan turned to Claire, his eyes searching hers for an answer. Claire? I didn't take a single penny of your mother's money, Ethan. Claire cut in, her voice clear and firm, looking directly into her husband's eyes. If searching our room is the only way to clear my name and prove that your mother is wrong, then let's do it. Let's go right now. Maria, please come with us as a witness. Fine. We'll search it now, Ethan decided, his jaw tight. He turned to Mrs. Davenport, his face filled with regret. Mrs. Davenport, I am profoundly sorry for this disruption. Please, give us 5 minutes to resolve this family misunderstanding. Please, enjoy your tea. Mrs. Davenport simply crossed her legs, her expression unreadable. By all means, Ethan, settle your domestic affairs. I'll wait. I'm quite curious myself to see who's really playing with fire in this house. Her words carried a sharp, double meaning, but Beatrice was too blinded by her impending victory to notice. Let's go. We'll see who's on their knees begging for forgiveness in a few minutes, Beatrice crowed, marching ahead of them towards the stairs like a general about to claim a decisive victory. Ethan held Claire's hand tightly, leading her after his mother, with Maria trailing behind. Claire walked in silence, her right hand gently squeezing her husband's, offering a false sense of calm. Her eyes were fixed on the back of her mother-in-law, who was strutting ahead with such arrogance. Yes, Beatrice, Claire thought coldly. We will soon see who will be crying, and who will lose everything today. Downstairs, in the now quiet living room, Mrs. Davenport shifted on the sofa. As she did, her elbow nudged her Hermes Birkin bag. The bag rocked slightly, the contents shifting with a soft, muffled rustle, now heavier by one thick, brown manila envelope, patiently waiting to be found. The sound of determined footsteps on the hardwood stairs broke the tense silence. Beatrice led the procession, her chin held high, her chest puffed out with self-righteous fury. Her pace was quick and confident, like an executioner eager to get to work. Behind her, Ethan held Claire's hand, his face a storm of disbelief and suppressed anger. Maria followed at the very end, her head bowed, muttering a silent prayer for the ordeal to be over. Beatrice shoved the door to Ethan and Claire's master bedroom open with such force that it slammed against the wall. The room was immaculate. The bed was perfectly made, the pillows arranged symmetrically, and a soft lavender scent hung in the air. To Beatrice, this tidiness was just a facade for her daughter-in-law's deceit. We'll start here, Beatrice announced, her voice booming. She strode directly to the large sliding door closet that dominated one wall of the room. Ethan stood in the doorway, his jaw clenched. Mom, don't overdo it. If you don't find anything, you will apologize to Claire. In front of Mrs. Davenport. Apologize? Ha! We'll see who's apologizing soon enough, Beatrice retorted with a harsh, grating laugh. With a single, violent tug, Beatrice slid the closet door open. Her eyes immediately locked onto the bottom shelf, where Ethan's dress shirts were neatly stacked. Her movements were swift, filled with the absolute certainty of her victory. She had replayed this moment in her mind a dozen times. She would lift the shirts, reveal the envelope, hold it up like a trophy, and then slap the smug look off her daughter-in-law's face. She grabbed the entire stack of ironed shirts and lifted them. The triumphant smile that had been forming on her lips instantly withered. Her hand patted the smooth, bare wood of the empty shelf. There was nothing there but the floral-patterned shelf liner. Beatrice's eyes widened. Her heart skipped a beat. She leaned in closer, her nose almost touching the shelf, making sure she wasn't mistaken. She threw the remaining shirts onto the floor in a frustrated heap. Still empty. Huh? Beatrice mumbled, her voice hoarse and confused. Well? Mom? Ethan's voice cut through the silence, cold and demanding. Where is it? Where is the charity money you said my wife stole? Where did she hide it? Beatrice swallowed hard. It felt like swallowing gravel. Wait a minute. She must have moved it. To another shelf, she stammered, trying to mask the wave of panic that was beginning to crash over her. Claire stood silently beside her husband, her face a perfect portrait of anxious, wounded innocence. But behind her eyes, a deep satisfaction bloomed as she watched her mother-in-law begin to unravel. Panic was now fully in control of Beatrice. She had been 100% certain. She herself had placed the envelope there just hours ago. The fact that it had vanished felt like a cruel joke played by a ghost. It has to be in here. I mean, she must have hidden it somewhere more secure. Beatrice shrieked. Her hands began to move with frantic, blind energy. She ripped open drawers, dumping their contents underwear, socks, handkerchiefs onto the floor. The metallic clang of hangers echoed as she shoved dresses and suits aside. The neatly pressed clothes Claire had so carefully prepared were now a wrinkled, chaotic mess on the floor, being trampled by Beatrice's high-heeled slippers. "Mom, stop it!" Ethan yelled, his patience completely gone. Their bedroom now looked like it had been hit by a tornado, but Beatrice was beyond reason. Her breathing grew heavy and ragged. Beads of sweat formed on her forehead, smearing her expensive foundation. She dropped to her knees, looking under the bed, pulling out shoeboxes, even tearing through the laundry hamper. "Where did you put it, you little snake?" she screamed, whirling to face Claire, her eyes bloodshot and wild. Her perfectly styled hair was coming undone, strands sticking to her sweaty face. She no longer looked like an elegant matriarch, but a madwoman searching for a needle in a haystack. "I swear to God, Beatrice, I don't know anything about that money. I haven't even been in this room since this morning," Claire replied, her voice cracking, on the verge of tears. She leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder, playing the part of the helpless victim. Ethan strode forward, grabbed his mother's arm as she was about to rifle through Claire's vanity drawer, and pulled her forcefully to her feet. "Enough!" he roared, the sound so loud it made Maria jump in the doorway. "You have destroyed our room. You have insulted my wife. And you have found absolutely nothing. But the money, Ethan, you don't understand." "The money," Beatrice sputtered, gasping for air. She wanted to scream, "It has to be here because I put it here." But saying that would expose her entire plot. "It's a lot of money, Ethan. It couldn't have just disappeared. She must have taken it out of the room, or what, Mom?" Ethan cut her off, his chest heaving with rage. "Or maybe you misplaced it and decided to find a scapegoat to cover up your own carelessness? You're always looking for a reason to get rid of Claire, but this time you've gone too far. A false accusation of theft in front of our most important potential investor. Do you have any idea what the consequences of this are for my company?" Ethan's words hit Beatrice like a physical blow. She stood frozen, a storm of confusion and fury raging inside her. How could her perfect plan have gone so horribly wrong? Where was that damned envelope? In the midst of the suffocating tension, the shrill ring of a cell phone cut through the air. Ethan pulled his phone from his pocket. The screen showed an incoming call from Mrs. Davenport's CFO. Ethan couldn't ignore it. Not now. "Maria," Ethan commanded, "go back downstairs. Make sure Mrs. Davenport's tea is still warm. Tell her I apologize. I have to take an urgent call from her office. I'll be down in a moment." "Yes, sir," Maria stammered, quickly turning and rushing back down the stairs. Ethan then turned his glare back to his mother. "Mom, don't touch another thing in this room. We will discuss this after Mrs. Davenport leaves." He then looked at Claire, his expression softening. "Honey, I'm just going to take this on the balcony. You stay here." "Okay, Ethan," Claire nodded obediently. Ethan turned and walked out of the room towards the small balcony at the end of the hall, sliding the glass door shut behind him. Now, in the wrecked bedroom, only two people remained, Beatrice and Claire. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The silence that fell was heavy, oppressive. Beatrice stood in the middle of the chaos, breathing heavily, her eyes staring blankly at the strewn clothes. Her mind was a complete blank. She felt as though she had fallen into a pit of her own digging. Then, she heard the soft sound of footsteps. Beatrice looked up. Claire was no longer cowering by the door. Her daughter-in-law was walking towards her, her steps measured and graceful. There were no more tears in her eyes, no more trembling in her shoulders. Claire's posture was ramrod straight, and on her face was a small, chilling smile. Claire stopped directly in front of her mother-in-law, less than 2 feet away. She leaned forward, bringing her face close to Beatrice's right ear. "Are you looking for a thick manila envelope, Beatrice?" Claire whispered. Her voice was as soft as silk, but it dripped with a poison that carried no trace of anger. Beatrice's entire body went rigid, as if struck by lightning. Her eyes flew wide open, but her tongue was suddenly stuck to the roof of her mouth. The envelope with $50,000 inside, Claire continued in that same deadly whisper. "The one you so carefully tucked under my husband's dress shirts this afternoon. It's a shame, Beatrice. Your plan wasn't quite perfect." Beatrice pulled back, staring at Claire with undisguised horror. Her lips trembled. You knew?" she stammered. Claire's smile widened. Her dark eyes bored into her mother-in-law's, locking onto her terrified gaze. "Of course, I knew. I'm the one who organizes this closet every single day. Did you really think I wouldn't notice a piece of rotting garbage smuggled inside?" Claire whispered again. "But don't you worry, Beatrice. I was so concerned about your reputation that I secured the money. I moved it from this room." Where?" Beatrice hissed, her hands gripping her own arms in a panic. If Claire had just hidden it somewhere else in the house, she still had a chance to find it. Claire tilted her head slightly, savoring every second of her mother-in-law's mental breakdown. "I moved it to the safest place I could think of," she said, enunciating each word with crystal clarity so its meaning would sink in completely. "A place you would never dare to touch, let alone search." Claire paused for dramatic effect. "I slipped it into Isabel Davenport's Hermes Birkin bag while it was sitting open on the sofa downstairs. It went in quite smoothly." That final sentence hit Beatrice's chest like a sledgehammer. The world around her seemed to stop spinning. The air in the room vanished, leaving her gasping like a fish on dry land. Her heart, which had been racing, felt like it stopped beating entirely. The blood drained from her face, leaving it a ghastly shade of white. In Mrs. Davenport's bag, in the bag of her guest of honor, Beatrice's cunning mind, usually so quick to plot and scheme, processed the information and presented her with an inescapable, horrifying conclusion. If she went downstairs and screamed that Claire had moved the money into Mrs. Davenport's bag, what would happen? Mrs. Davenport would open her purse, and there it would be, a manila envelope stuffed with $50,000, money Beatrice had claimed was for charity. Who would Mrs. Davenport believe? Would she believe that a quiet daughter-in-law had the audacious idea to stuff stolen money into her bag? No. A sharp, powerful woman like Isabel Davenport would immediately jump to one logical conclusion. It was a bribe. She would assume Beatrice, desperate for the investment, had secretly slipped the money into her bag as a crude, insulting payoff. Isabel Davenport was a woman who prided herself on her integrity and had zero tolerance for bribery. If she felt she was being bribed in such a low-class manner, she wouldn't just refuse the investment. She would annihilate Ethan's company's reputation among the entire business elite. And if Beatrice tried to explain the truth that she was actually trying to frame her own daughter-in-law, the outcome would be just as disastrous. Mrs. Davenport would be disgusted at being used as an unwitting pawn in a vile family drama. Worse, Ethan would hear everything. Her own son would finally know that his mother was a monster who tried to destroy his marriage with a vicious lie. Beatrice was trapped in an invisible cage she had built herself, and the key was now held firmly in Claire's hand. Her knees buckled. She stumbled, catching herself on the edge of the bed. Her body trembled uncontrollably. The charity money wasn't even hers. She would have to pay it back. If she couldn't get it back from Mrs. Davenport, she would have to replace it from her own funds, or she herself would be accused of embezzlement by her own charity committee. Checkmate. From every angle, she had lost. Claire straightened up, calmly adjusting the collar of her blouse. "You look awfully pale, Beatrice," she remarked, her voice dripping with false concern. She turned and walked towards the door. At the threshold, she glanced back at her mother-in-law, who was now sitting limply on the edge of the mattress. "Come now, Beatrice. Don't take all day. It's rude to leave Mrs. Davenport waiting downstairs alone for so long," Claire said, her voice as sweet as honey and as sharp as a razor. Without waiting for a reply, Claire stepped out of the room, her expression instantly shifting back to that of a dutiful, traumatized daughter-in-law. A few moments later, the three of them descended the stairs. Ethan walked in front, his face still flushed with anger. He held Claire's hand, who walked beside him with her head demurely lowered. Trailing behind them, Beatrice moved like a zombie, her feet dragging, her eyes vacant. Her makeup was ruined, her hair a mess. Her only focus was the black handbag that was now, for her, a weapon of mass destruction. Upon reaching the living room, they found Mrs. Davenport sipping her now cool tea, looking thoroughly bored. She set her cup down as they entered. "Well, did you find the thief?" she asked with a hint of sarcasm, her eyes fixed on the disheveled Beatrice. Ethan stepped forward, bowing his head slightly. "Mrs. Davenport, I am so sorry for this embarrassing incident. We searched the entire room. No money was found. My wife has been completely exonerated. It was purely a misunderstanding, a moment of panic from my mother, who is overtired and has likely misplaced something." Ethan emphasized the last few words, deliberately shaming his mother. Mrs. Davenport sighed. "I see. Well, an accusation without proof is slander, Beatrice. I certainly hope this display doesn't reflect how this family runs a business. Precision and integrity are everything." The subtle jab hit Ethan hard, but to Beatrice, it was just background noise. Her eyes were locked on one object, and one object only, the black Hermes Birkin bag, resting on the sofa cushion next to Mrs. Davenport. "It's in there," a voice screamed inside Beatrice's head. $50,000 is in that bag. Rational thought had completely abandoned her, replaced by a desperate, panicked impulse. She had to get that money back, before Mrs. Davenport left. She had to get it back, no matter what. Forcing a laugh that sounded more like a strangled squawk, Beatrice said, "Ha ha ha, yes, Isabel, I'm just getting old, you know. My memory. So embarrassing." Beatrice shuffled towards the sofa. Instead of sitting in her own chair, she moved deliberately towards the long sofa where Mrs. Davenport and her bag were. "My, it's so warm in here today, isn't it?" she said, fanning her face with her hand. She then looked at the glass coffee table, searching for an excuse. "Oh dear, is that a speck of dust on the table? Maria's work is slipping." Beatrice leaned over, pretending to wipe the edge of the glass table with her hand. But her real target was not the table. As she bent over, she kept inching sideways, closer and closer to the bag. Her trembling hand reached out, her fingertips just about to touch the gold-plated zipper. "Beatrice." Mrs. Davenport's icy voice stopped her hand in midair. Beatrice looked up, startled. Mrs. Davenport was staring at her, one eyebrow arched, her expression a mixture of confusion and disgust at this bizarre, invasive behavior. "The table is perfectly clean. Please, don't trouble yourself," she said firmly, a clear dismissal. Oh, yes, of course. My mistake," Beatrice stammered, pulling her hand back and laughing nervously. But she wasn't done. Panic made her reckless. She took a step back and pretended to admire the handbag. "Wow, Isabel, is that the latest Birkin? The leather is exquisite," she gushed awkwardly. Then, she reached for it again, this time more aggressively. "But it's a shame to leave it on the sofa like this. What if it gets a stain from the tea? Here, let me move it to that side table for you. It will be safer over there." Beatrice almost had it. Her plan was to grab the bag, pretend to trip while moving it, and let the contents spill, allowing her to snatch her envelope in the ensuing chaos. But before her fingers could touch the strap, Mrs. Davenport swiftly pulled the bag away, placing it protectively in her own lap. Her face was now a mask of clear displeasure. For a woman of her status, having someone touch her personal belongings without permission was a major social foul, especially someone acting as erratically as Beatrice. That won't be necessary, Beatrice. It's fine right here. Besides, it contains sensitive documents and personal items. I prefer to keep it close, Mrs. Davenport said sharply, her eyes now filled with suspicion. Frankly, your behavior all afternoon has been quite unsettling. First, the hysterical screaming about a theft, and now this obsession with my handbag. What exactly is going on? Hearing the rising anger in Mrs. Davenport's voice, Ethan intervened, his face burning with shame. His mother's actions were completely unhinged. "Mom, sit down in your own chair. Now," he commanded in a low, threatening voice, "do not disturb our guest or her belongings." Beatrice retreated, collapsing into the armchair, her legs finally giving out. She stared at the bag in Mrs. Davenport's lap with utter despair. From across the room, Claire moved with quiet grace, holding the crystal teapot. She approached the coffee table, a serene smile on her face. "Let me pour you some more tea, Mrs. Davenport," she offered in a calm, soothing voice, as if nothing had happened. "It seems our afternoon has been rather eventful." Mrs. Davenport looked at Claire, and for the first time that day, her stern expression softened. She nodded slowly. "Thank you, Claire. It's a relief to know there is at least one sane person in this house." As Claire poured the tea, she watched her mother-in-law out of the corner of her eye. Beatrice sat frozen in her chair, shivering silently as she watched her own self-inflicted doom creeping ever closer. The antique grandfather clock in the corner ticked with a steady, relentless rhythm, the only normal sound in a room thick with suffocating tension. Ethan sat stiffly, desperately trying to salvage the meeting by discussing the financial projections of his project, but his voice was strained, his mind still reeling. Across from him, Mrs. Davenport listened with a detached, icy expression, her Hermes bag once again resting beside her on the sofa as she flipped through the proposal. And at the other end of the room, Beatrice sat like a condemned prisoner awaiting her sentence. A cold sweat soaked her silk dress. Her eyes darted constantly towards the black bag, her mind a whirlwind of panicked, irrational thoughts. How can I get it? How can I get the envelope without anyone seeing? So, the estimated return on investment is approximately 18 months. Mrs. Davenport, Ethan was saying, trying to sound professional. Mrs. Davenport nodded slowly. The numbers are sound. But as I said earlier, Ethan, business isn't just about numbers. It's about who you do business with. It's about integrity. She stressed the last word, her eyes flicking for a second towards Beatrice, who immediately looked down at her lap. The word integrity was another blow to Beatrice's crumbling composure. She couldn't take it anymore. She had to separate Mrs. Davenport from that bag. She needed a distraction, a big one. "Oh!" Beatrice cried out suddenly, cutting Ethan off mid-sentence. She clutched her head dramatically, her face contorting in a pantomime of agony. "My head. Oh heavens. I feel so dizzy. The room is spinning." Ethan stopped, looking at his mother with a mixture of suspicion and exhaustion. "Mom, what is it now? If you're not feeling well, you should go rest upstairs. I can handle this." No, it's nothing, dear. Just a side effect of the shock from earlier," Beatrice insisted, forcing herself to stand on deliberately shaky legs. "I just need to take my medication." "Ethan, could you be a dear and get my pill box for me? It's in the drawer of that cabinet over by the television." Ethan sighed, but not wanting to prolong the drama, he stood and walked towards the cabinet, turning his back to the sofas. This was her chance, her one, crucial moment. As soon as Ethan's back was turned, Beatrice made her move. But instead of heading for the stairs to rest, she lurched towards the coffee table in front of Mrs. Davenport. Her insane plan was to pretend to reach for a glass of water, then accidentally trip on the thick rug and fall towards the sofa, knocking the bag over in the process. But life, in its cruel irony, made her clumsy plan a reality. Her legs were genuinely trembling from panic, and her eyes were so fixated on the Hermes bag that she didn't see the tassel on the edge of the Persian rug. The heel of her slipper caught on it. Her balance vanished completely. "Ah!" Beatrice shrieked in genuine alarm as she pitched forward uncontrollably. Her arms flailed, grabbing at nothing but air and the edge of a tablecloth before her body slammed into the coffee table. Crash! The The sound of shattering crystal and breaking glass exploded through the room. The teapot and cups flew off the table, sending hot chamomile tea and sharp shards of baccarat crystal across the expensive rug. But it wasn't the sound of breaking glass that made time stand still. The force of Beatrice's fall slammed against the edge of the sofa, sending Mrs. Davenport's Hermes Birkin bag flying. The black purse tumbled through the air before landing upside down on the floor with a heavy thud. Its unlatched top gaped wide open, and its entire contents spilled out across the rug. A designer glasses case, a long crimson leather wallet, a gold-plated lipstick tube, a pack of tissues, and a thick, brown manila envelope. The impact with the floor was enough to snap the old rubber band holding the money inside. The torn flap of the envelope could no longer contain its contents. Stacks of crisp, $100 bills burst forth, fanning out in an obscene, incriminating display on the rug, directly at Mrs. Davenport's feet. A deep, deathly silence fell over the room. Even breathing seemed to stop. In the kitchen, Claire, holding an empty tray, paused. She leaned her back against the wall, closed her eyes, and allowed herself a tiny, almost imperceptible smile. The bomb had finally gone off. Ethan, who had just opened the cabinet drawer, spun around. His jaw dropped. He stood frozen, staring in horror at the scene of chaos. His mother, sprawled pathetically on the floor amidst broken glass and spilled tea. But his eyes, like everyone else's, were drawn to the mess at Mrs. Davenport's feet, the pile of cash spewing from the brown envelope. "Mom!" Ethan yelled, rushing over. Beatrice scrambled in a panic, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Her knee was bleeding from a shard of crystal, but she didn't feel it. Her eyes were wide with terror at the sight of the exposed envelope. Her animal instincts took over. Her trembling hand shot out, trying desperately to scoop up the envelope and the money. Thwack. The pointed tip of Mrs. Davenport's high heel came down hard on the back of Beatrice's hand, pinning it to the floor. Beatrice let out a choked cry of pain. She looked up slowly, meeting Mrs. Davenport's gaze. If before, Mrs. Davenport's face was as cold as ice, it was now a thundercloud of pure, unadulterated fury. Her jaw was set like granite, and her eyes stared down at Beatrice with a look of such profound disgust. It was as if she were looking at a cockroach crawling on her plate. "Take your hand off my property," Mrs. Davenport hissed. Her voice wasn't loud. It was low, guttural, and trembling with restrained rage. It was a tone that sent a shiver of genuine fear down Ethan's spine. Beatrice snatched her hand back and collapsed into a whimpering heap on the rug. Her face was ashen, her lips moving without a sound. Mrs. Davenport bent down slowly. She ignored her wallet, her lipstick. With 2 fingers, as if touching something contaminated, she picked up the thick manila envelope, letting a few loose bills flutter back to the floor. She held it up in front of Beatrice's and Ethan's faces. Her eyes narrowed, reading the faded stamp in the corner. Children's Hospital Charity Gala. "What is this, Beatrice?" she asked, her voice deadly quiet. She had dropped the polite Isabel and Jang pretense. That's..." Beatrice stammered, fresh tears of pure terror now streaming down her face. Her throat was completely closed. "I asked you, what is this?" Mrs. Davenport's voice rose a single, terrifying octave. "Is this not the charity envelope you were screaming about? The one that was stolen from your safe? The $50,000 you accused your daughter-in-law of taking?" Ethan swallowed, his mind, usually so sharp, struggling to process the impossible scene. "Mrs. Davenport, I don't understand. How could that money?" Ethan pointed at the envelope with a shaking hand. "How could that stolen money be in your bag?" Mrs. Davenport turned her blazing eyes on Ethan. "An excellent question, Ethan. How could it?" she said, letting out a short, humorless laugh. She turned back to the trembling woman on the floor. "I came here for a business meeting. I sat on this sofa. I never once left my bag unattended, and I certainly did not go upstairs to break into your safe." She threw the envelope down into Beatrice's lap. "Do you think I'm a fool, Beatrice?" she roared, her anger finally erupting. She stood, towering over her. "You deliberately slipped this money into my bag. Did you think I was some cheap politician you could bribe with cash to sign your son's proposal? You have insulted my integrity. You have insulted my very name." "No, that's not it, Mrs. Davenport. I swear," Beatrice shrieked, groveling at her feet. "I never meant to bribe you. On my life, I did not." "Then what was it?" Mrs. Davenport snapped. "If it wasn't a bribe, why did you secretly put $50,000 in my purse? Were you trying to set me up? Accuse me of stealing your charity money? Is that your game? Blackmail?" The barrage of accusations hammered Beatrice's logic into dust. No, this was all wrong. Mrs. Davenport had it all wrong. Her target was never Isabel Davenport. It was Claire. She had to fix this, or her reputation would be ruined forever. In a moment of absolute panic, a person's mental defenses crumble, and the unvarnished truth often comes spewing out. Pushed to the brink by Mrs. Davenport's fury and Ethan's demanding stare, Beatrice's mind short-circuited. Her only goal was to clear her name of bribing or blackmailing this powerful woman. "I didn't put it in your bag!" Beatrice shrieked, her voice a desperate, breaking wail, her mascara-stained tears making her face a grotesque mask. "Don't lie," Ethan yelled, his own voice cracking with rage, a vein pulsing in his neck. "That bag has been right there the whole time. You're the one who's been acting strange, trying to touch it. If not you, then who? A ghost? Tell me the truth, Mom. Where did that money really come from, and who put it there?" Cornered by her own son, Beatrice's last line of defense shattered. Without thinking, without considering the consequences, her mouth moved faster than her brain. "I took the money out of the safe, Ethan. I did." Beatrice howled in frustration, pounding her fists on the rug. "But I swear on my life I didn't put it in her bag. I put that money in Claire's closet, under your shirts. I put it there." An unnatural, absolute silence fell upon the room, as if a spell had been cast. The only sound was the loud, lonely ticking of the grandfather clock, marking the seconds after Beatrice's fatal confession. "I put that money in Claire's closet." Beatrice slapped her hands over her mouth, her eyes bugging out. Her heart plummeted into the pit of her stomach. She froze, finally realizing what she had just said. She had just dug her own grave, climbed in, and buried herself alive. Ethan took 2 slow steps back. His face, which had been red with anger, was now a deathly pale. He stared at his mother with a profound, soul-deep shock, as if seeing a monster for the very first time. What did you just say?" Ethan's voice was a ragged, barely audible whisper. "You put it in Claire's closet? Under my clothes?" His brilliant mind, trained to analyze complex business deals, processed the new information with horrifying speed and clarity. All the pieces clicked into place. His mother's insults at breakfast, her show of displaying the money, her command for Claire to stay in the kitchen, the forced search of their room. It was all a lie. A sick, twisted theatrical production. It was all a setup, Ethan breathed, his chest heaving. "You faked the whole thing. You pretended the money was stolen just so you could accuse Claire of being a thief. You wanted me to hate my own wife, to divorce her. You wanted to ruin her life." Beatrice shook her head violently, reaching for her son's pant leg. "Ethan, listen to me, darling. I did it for you. That girl is not good enough for you. I just wanted to clear the way for you to find a wife on our level." Ethan kicked her hand away with a gasp of revulsion, as if her touch were a disease. "Don't you touch me!" he screamed, his voice breaking with a toxic mix of rage, shame, and unbearable heartbreak. "You're sick. You're a criminal." Across the room, Mrs. Davenport watched the family implode with an expression of pure, unadulterated disgust. "What a truly pathetic soap opera," she said, her voice dripping with a sarcasm so thick it could be cut with a knife. "So, you were trying to frame your own daughter-in-law, Beatrice? The work of a truly demonic mother-in-law," she scoffed, shaking her head. "But I have to wonder, if you put it in her closet, how did your filthy money end up in my bag? Never mind. I don't care. Perhaps it was divine intervention, showing me your true colors before I made a terrible mistake." "Mrs. Davenport calmly knelt and gathered her scattered belongings, her wallet, glasses, case, lipstick, and placed them back in her bag. She left the manila envelope and the $50,000 lying on the tea-stained rug. She stood, straightened her suit, and looked at Ethan with a gaze full of pity and contempt. "Ethan," she said, her voice calm again, but every word was a death sentence for his career. "Mrs. Davenport, please." "I can explain," Ethan pleaded. "This is a family issue. It has nothing to do with my professionalism or my company." Mrs. Davenport held up a hand, silencing him instantly. "To me, a business is a reflection of its leader's character," she stated. "How can I entrust my millions to a man who can't even recognize the poison in his own home? A man who allows his own wife to be subjected to such a vile and criminal plot by his own mother? If your mother can so easily concoct a scheme to destroy her own family, what's to stop you from concocting a scheme to defraud your investors?" Ethan hung his head, his body shaking. He had no defense. She was right. "Our potential investment deal is officially terminated. Effective immediately," Mrs. Davenport declared, without a shred of hesitation. "And I will make it my personal mission to share this disgraceful story with every single one of my business associates. I will not allow my friends to fall into a partnership with a family that has no moral compass whatsoever." Beatrice let out a strangled cry from the floor. "Mrs. Davenport, no, please, punish me, but don't ruin my son. I'm sorry." Mrs. Davenport didn't even glance at her. She slung her bag over her arm and walked with deadly, elegant purpose to the front door. She turned one last time, her cold gaze sweeping over the ruined family. "Get your house in order, Ethan, before you dream of running a major project. Good afternoon." The door closed with a soft click, a sound as final as a judge's gavel. Mrs. Davenport was gone, and with her, the future of Ethan's company and the family's reputation. Ethan stood frozen. Months of hard work, of ambition, all destroyed in a single afternoon by his own mother's hatred. He looked down at her, now weeping hysterically on the floor, mourning her scattered money and her belated regret. He felt nothing for her but a deep, nauseating disgust. From the hallway, Claire stepped forward. Her face was a perfect mask of shock, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She approached Ethan, gently touching his arm. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling. "All of this. She was trying to frame me? She wanted to put me in jail?" Her soft questions were the final daggers to Ethan's resolve. He turned and looked at his wife's innocent face, the woman who had served him faithfully despite constant abuse. An immense, crushing guilt washed over him. Ignoring his mother's wails, Ethan pulled Claire into his arms, holding her tightly, burying his face in her shoulder. And then he wept. The proud, ambitious young CEO wept with shame and regret. "I'm so sorry, Claire. I'm so sorry. I'm a fool. I failed to protect you," he whispered hoarsely between sobs. "I promise you, from this day forward, no one will ever hurt you again. Not even my own mother. We're leaving this house. Tonight. I promise." Claire returned his embrace, patting his back gently, playing the part of the forgiving, angelic wife. But over her husband's shaking shoulder, her eyes, now cold and hard as steel, stared directly at the pathetic, broken form of Beatrice on the floor. That night, the house was as silent as a tomb. Ethan had packed 2 large suitcases with his and Claire's belongings. He had made up his mind. He refused to speak a single word to his mother. For him, her actions were not a mistake. They were a calculated crime, and they were unforgivable. He was now on the front lawn, calling a car service to take them to a hotel for the night before they started looking for a new home in the morning. In the still chaotic living room, Beatrice sat on the floor, her gaze empty. Her hair was a mess, her eyes swollen shut from crying. She had gathered the $50,000 back into the torn envelope and clutched it to her chest. She had lost everything in one afternoon: her son's future, her social standing, and most painfully, the love and respect of her only child. Soft footsteps descended the stairs. Claire, now changed into casual clothes, approached the living room carrying a small dustpan and a cloth. Without a word, she knelt by the shattered remains of the crystal teapot. Calmly and methodically, she began to pick up the sharp pieces of glass, one by one. She was cleaning up the mess her mother-in-law had made. Beatrice slowly looked up. Her red-rimmed eyes met Claire's. There was still hatred there, but it was buried under a much larger mountain of fear and powerlessness. Beatrice now understood that she had picked a fight with the wrong opponent. The daughter-in-law she had dismissed as a simple, weak-willed girl from the country was, in fact, a master strategist. Claire hadn't needed to scream or cry or lie to win. She had simply turned the trap back on its creator with lethal elegance, allowing Beatrice to dig her own grave, climb in, and pull the dirt in on top of herself. "You," Beatrice's voice was a ragged, choked whisper. "You're a devil. You planned all of this. You moved the money on purpose." Claire paused in her cleaning. She set down the cloth and slowly raised her head, looking directly into her mother-in-law's terrified eyes. The mask of the innocent, victimized wife was gone. Her face was serene, but it radiated an aura of absolute dominance. The corner of her mouth curved slowly into a cold, sharp, knowing smile, the smile of a true victor. Claire leaned forward slightly, her voice a soft, chilling whisper that was more terrifying than any shout. "I didn't plan this, Beatrice," she murmured, her gaze unwavering. "You set the stage. You wrote the script. You cast the actors. I was just the dutiful daughter-in-law who helped make sure your production had a truly unforgettable finale." Beatrice swallowed hard, a tremor running through her entire body. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She was utterly and completely defeated. "And look," Claire continued, her smile widening as she slowly stood up, holding the dustpan full of broken crystal. She looked down at her mother-in-law, as a queen might look at a disgraced servant. The show was a massive success, wasn't it? Everyone was entertained, especially me. From the front hall, Ethan's footsteps approached. Instantly, Claire's expression transformed. The cold smile vanished, replaced by a soft, sad, weary look. "Are you all packed, honey?" Ethan asked as he entered, completely ignoring his mother's presence on the floor. Claire turned to her husband with a gentle look and nodded. "Yes, Ethan. I was just cleaning up this broken glass. I didn't want anyone to get hurt." Ethan's face filled with even more guilt at this display of his wife's kindness. He put a protective arm around her shoulder. "Let Maria handle the rest tomorrow. Come on, the car is here. Let's go. You never have to set foot in this house again." "Okay, Ethan," Claire replied obediently. He guided her towards the front door, leaving Beatrice to her solitary, weeping vigil in the dimming room. Just before they stepped over the threshold, Claire glanced back one last time at the broken figure of her mother-in-law. She said nothing. She simply gave a slow, deliberate wink, a final, sweet, and devastating farewell. Then she turned and walked out into the night, towards her new life, leaving the once great matriarch to drown in her own ruin, forever.